Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode with sound of Daily December 2017 day. This is day 10, and this is the second time I've recorded this video because the first time OBS decided that no sound was better than sound because I had issues with my computer. I literally had to take the whole darn thing apart, rip out my video card to make sure it was still working. It was not fun. Especially, doing computer repair work is difficult in general. It's not an incredibly easy thing in the world. Doing computer repair work when you have a tremor is just no. It was not fun. So anyway, anytime I do that, I have to reset everything on OBS, and I forgot. So this is me re-recording. Maybe this one will come out better. Who knows? I think the last one was really good. It was a little bit long for my taste, but who knows? Anyway, the subject of this one, because this is supposed to be day 10 now, because I'm a couple days behind. So, I just saw Jim Sterling's Jimquisition video, or I had just seen when I first recorded this hours and hours and hours ago. See, and the weird thing was, the first video that I made today that had no sound, I had likes on it. Like, people liked the video. I don't know if they were trying to tell me that they don't want me talking anymore or what, but it was really weird. It wasn't until like an hour ago that someone went, "Hey, by the way, there's no sound." And I couldn't figure out, anyway. So, big fan of Jim Sterling. I think as far as a critic, I think he's really interesting. I enjoy watching his stuff. Specifically, I enjoy the amount of work that he goes into, that he puts into doing his research and formulating his opinions based on actively searching and dying. Like, he puts a ton of work into what he makes. Just look at, like his what was it, copyright deadlock that he uses every so often, because the Jimquisition is paid for entirely through Patreon, which we'll talk about in a second. Like, he really does put a lot of work into it, and I think he's a really interesting creator. If that makes you hate me, I'm super sorry. But anyways, the tail end of Jimquisition today, because that wasn't the main topic of it, but the tail end of the Jimquisition was he mentioned the Patreon fiasco. And I wanted to give, first of all, my personal opinion on it, my view on it from a business perspective, seen as I am a business professional. I have years and years and years of management experience. I am 2 courses away and a capstone from having a degree in marketing management. And I've actually been able to teach my professors a couple of things in some of these courses, or at least I've been able to refute some of the things in the textbook, going, no, that's total bollocks. But anyway, so, I feel absolutely miserable. I did not want to record this many videos today. We'll try an experiment, though. Last video, I wouldn't say it. This video, I'll say flat out, I'm going through withdrawal from, I'm going through benzo withdrawal because my doctor's taking me off these drugs that are hazardous to my health, these medications. But if I say something like medication, drugs, anything like that, I will get auto-flagged for demonetization. Or if you say the word demonetization, you get auto-flagged and you can't make any money, and then I have to manually request reviews. And I've actually had one of my videos reviewed where they sent me an email saying, "Hey, your video's been manually reviewed and it's advertiser friendly." And the rest of them, just after I click the review button, it takes a couple of days and they just magically become monetization-able. So we'll see if mentioning the word medication or psychiatrist who is monitoring my medication to make sure I don't die from this. We'll see if that gets this video demonetized when I avoided all of those words in the last one. But I'm also going to talk about another thing that they don't like, which is Patreon. For those of you that are not in the know, Patreon recently announced in an email that they were changing how some things work as far as where they take their cut. Now, I have a Patreon. You guys probably have no idea that it exists. I just realized I forgot to put a link to the Dragon Knight in my last video, which was all about the Dragon Knight. So I'm doing that while I'm talking here. But anyway, a lot of you guys probably have no idea I have a Patreon because I have exactly 2 patrons. And they're both wonderful, amazing people. I know them both personally. I think that's probably why they support me, because they actually know me. There we go. Everything's fixed. All right. So I have a Patreon, and I've been doing it for years and everything like that. And so when I got the email stating that, hey, we're going to change how things go, I apparently had a reaction different to everybody else. And the big reaction that I'm seeing to this is, well, I guess, again, let me explain. So they're changing how fees and everything works. Patreon itself is a company. A company takes money to run. You have to pay your employees. You have to pay upkeep costs. You have to pay, electricity bills and rental fees or taxes on the land if you actually own the building or anything else. There's billions of different things. It costs money. It costs money to run a business. That's how it works. It's how it's always worked. So, the way that it has been working since its inception, and I actually know the guys that created Patreon, not like personally, but a friend of mine actually interviewed them when Patreon was still unknown, when it was a brand new thing. He had a Google Hangouts talk show type thing where he just bring on random people and talk to them, and he had the creators of Patreon on there to talk about Patreon, and they truly are really wonderful, amazing guys. And so what's basically happening is the email started with, our goal is to help creators as much as we can, and this is a very common good business practice. Is to make decisions based off of when you create a company, you create a business, you want to have a goal for that business. This is our goal. It needs to be something. It needs to be something obtainable, not like to improve the world. That's not quantifiable. It's not obtainable. Just improve the world is not really a good business plan. However, theirs has always been to support creators as much as they can financially. Like, that is the purpose of their business, is to help creators to be able to financially support themselves. So they are very creator focused. And the way Patreon has worked thus far has been that when you made your like $1, $5, $10 pledge, Patreon took a portion of that to cover their operating costs. Everything from paying the salaries to and hourly wages. I don't know how they pay their employees, if it's a mixture or whatever. To pay for running a business, they would take a portion of that. And it was the creators that actually took the hit. Like, if you donated $1, you'd be charged $1. The creators would only get a portion of that. I know for me personally, I was getting, depending on the month, because I do a monthly Patreon, depending on the month, I might only see like 2/3 of what my patrons were actually giving to me. And so the rest of that went towards running Patreon, which was fine. But again, the whole purpose of the business is to help creators as much as they can. So they had this idea, and it's not that they came up with this out of thin air. People have asked them. I've seen them at panels. I've seen tweets. I have been asked by some people that have considered becoming my patrons, hey, how does Patreon make money? I said, well, they take a little bit of money out of each transaction, and that's how they pay. That's their business model. On the internet in general, you make money by selling ads. Patreon doesn't do that. And so they go, well, so that means if I pay $1, like if I pay you $1, you're not going to get a whole dollar. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. Well, is there any way that I can, like, I can cover the extra fees? Like, is there a way? I said, to be perfectly honest, I don't know. I don't know the exact fees because they change randomly, depending on what's going on. So I could not tell you how much you would need to pledge to give me $1. And there's no button on it that says I would like to cover the cost of this pledge. So people have asked about this. People have been wanting this. So Patreon, let's go. Let's out this email saying, hey, in order to better help support creators, what we're going to do is we're going to take the burden of supporting Patreon and our monetary needs away from the creators that are creating all this content that we created this company to help. We're going to shift that over to the patrons themselves, the people that are actually paying. And the way they're doing this is apparently now on each pledge, there's a 2.9% fee that they charge, and then a flat 35-cent fee to make sure at minimum for like running a credit card and stuff like that. Like every time you try and run a credit card, that actually costs companies money. So most will have fees and stuff like that, built in, and that's why some stores will say you can't buy something with a credit card unless you spend at least $10. It's because they'll lose money on the transaction otherwise. So anyway, they did this and people started freaking the hell out. Oh my God, Patreon, you're evil, you're horrible, you're trying to suck all this money. Blah, 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 blah. And everybody's freaking out, calling Patreon these money-grubbing, horrible. No, they're not. They're wonderful people. They really, really are. And they're simply doing something that they have been asked to do for, I know, well over a year. To be 100% honest, I think Patreon has been going for like 3 or 4 years now at least. And I know at least since its inception, I think one of the questions on the Google Hangout was, well, can patrons actually, pay it so that, the creator gets more money? That might have even been a question on that first Hangout show. I don't actually remember. But it, it was, it's something that people have been asking for. And so they decided to do it, and people flipped shit. People are dropping their patronage left and right. And the big issue is basically with $1 pledges. Because it used to be if you pledged $1, you paid $1. So if you were supporting, and that's where the bulk of most people that make their living off of creating and Patreon is part of their livelihood. In general, that means you need at least a few hundred, if not 1,000 or a couple thousand people, and half of those will be $1 pledges, easily. Because again, $1 doesn't seem like a whole lot, but when you get $1 from 1,000 people, that's $1,000. So it's a very simple way to, and that's where I think the bulk of most people that live off of Patreon, most of their patrons are $1, and then you could probably go a standard deviation out, and you'd only get up to like the majority of them going out to up to maybe a $5 donation. So that's the bulk of the people that use Patreon. Well, now if you factor in 2.9% plus 35 cents for $1 pledge, you're now playing like $1.40, $1.50. And that's a significant increase, especially if you pledge to a channel that does it per work of art or something like that, where you might be paying 4 or 5 times a month, or even more than that, 10, 15 times. Every single time this charge happens, that becomes a really big deal. So if you had someone that was supporting 5 patrons at $1 a month, and now you increase it by, to use easy numbers, 50 cents, it's not that high, but 50 cents is easier than using 40 cents. you've effectively added $250 onto their monthly bill, and that means they've got to get rid of at least two patrons if they only have $5 a month they can spare for Patreon. That's how it happened. And so, yeah, people are freaking out, and they're talking about how money grubbing these people are, and they're not. What they've done is they've released a very unpopular, or they've released something that has been requested of them in probably the worst possible way they could. If anyone from Patreon is watching, what are you doing with your lives? You have much better things to do right now. You have a crisis on your hand. But thank you for watching my video. This was implemented horrifically, which is why the huge backlash is happening right now. However, the idea itself is a good idea. It is entirely in line with your business goals, which is to help fund creators as well as you can. It makes perfect sense. It simply was implemented incredibly poorly. From a marketing perspective, it could not have gone worse. And with the current political climate of anybody that has money is automatically evil, we have effectively ever since like the 99% rallies, we have effectively villainized anyone that has money. If you have money, you are a horrible, disgusting individual. And we will only forget that you have money if you entertain us or if you are giving tons and tons and tons of that money away to whatever cause we feel is most important at that particular time. Other than that, if you have money, you're a disgusting individual. And corporations are the root of all evil. All they care about is money and all this. None of that is true at all. It never has been. It never will be. The guys at Patreon are really, really great. They really are. And this is not them attempting to make a money grab or anything. Is it more money than they were than the fees that they were charging before? I think so. Again, I never looked very close, and I had 2 patrons. I think in my heyday, like when I was doing really well, I had 4. So it's not like I have a lot of data to go off of. But even using the very basic math that I'm able to do while I'm going through withdrawal, they are taking more money than they were before. And they're probably doing that because the business itself is growing exponentially. So bigger business needs more money. And a lot of people don't realize things like, let's say they're not hiring new staff. Let's say they're keeping the exact same staff. Some people will go, well, look, you're taking more money, but you're not hiring more staff, or you're not doing anything. So you're just lining your pockets, you greedy. No. See, here's the thing about business. If you have employees, they expect raises. Depending on the industry that you're in, you may have quarterly raises, you may have semi-annual, you may have annual raises. But it's very rare to work in any industry where the salary you were hired at remains the exact same amount of money for the entire time you work at that company. Companies that work that way don't tend to do very well. You need to be able to show that there is an investment to be made in the company from the employee. You need to show that you value the investment of them spending the time to make the company what it is and being a positive force in the company and things like that. And raises is one of the ways that you do that. And it's a business cost. Any business that's worth their weight in poker chips, and I mean the chips themselves, not the value of the chips, just plastic poker chips, will have a budget for things. Basically, it's called internal marketing. But basically, you want your employees to feel wanted. You want your employees to feel valued in the company. You want them excited about what the company does. And so most companies will have in their budget stuff for things like Employee of the Month award type things, or maybe money that can be dipped into to buy dinner for the late shift or something like that on a particularly bad night, or reward people for coming in during a blizzard or something like that. All companies have a budget for this. or let me rephrase that. All good companies have a sort of employee rewards budget. They don't always use it, and depending on the employees and how well they're doing, if you have bad employees, you'll fire them instead of trying to incentivize them to do better by giving them no. If you're a bad employee, you're going to get fired. All of that stuff costs money. So it does not surprise me in the least that Patreon is increasing the amount of money that they're taking. It's not so they can get richer and richer and they're evil people. No, their company is growing exponentially. They are being asked to do significantly more difficult and taxing things. I will guarantee their staff is expanding. I remember seeing posts and things like that for job openings at Patreon within the last year or two. So I know they are expanding. And any company as large as they are that is being utilized as often that they are has to keep growing. They really do. So that's why they're doing this. Okay, it's not because they're evil. It's not because they're they have to have as much money as physically possible. They're not trying to bleed people dry. They are trying to run a company that is getting increasingly more expensive to run. And that's how it works. Now, I'm not saying this was a good idea, or I'm not saying this. I'm saying it was a good idea. I'm not saying this was implemented properly whatsoever. First of all, the $1 Patreon argument is 100% valid. And that is the biggest flaw with what this is for $1 patrons. For even like for a $5 patron, 35 cents does not change a ton. For a $1 patron, you're talking about over a third of their pledge is being increased by a third flat, and then you have that extra 2.9%. So I mean that's almost a 40% increase. When you think about it as 35 plus 3, so it'd be 38 cents, so just under 40 cents, which would be a 40% increase. That's a huge thing. That is going to kill off a lot of patrons. And again, a very healthy Patreon, like half of your business is going to be your $1 patrons. It really is. So you've just targeted a very large portion of creators. Theoretically, this should be a good thing because creators will start taking home more money. Again, they mentioned that creators would be taking much closer to about 95%, as opposed to, again, I was taking home like 67% or maybe 75% on a good month. So going up to 95%, especially for people that are getting thousands a month, that's a big deal. That can really improve their lives. However, for those that are giving, again, you have this very, very large issue of it's a huge increase for the very small donation amounts, whereas with the really big donation amounts, it doesn't really matter. So I have some ideas. Again, if anyone from Patreon is watching this, I think really there's 3 ways to fix this that I can see. One, people probably would have, and this is kind of a hindsight is 2020 thing. This could have been implemented a lot better by giving us a lot more warning than, next month your pledge is going to increase. If this had been something that had been mentioned 6 months ago, where they go, hey, by the way, this is our business goal. We want to help creators as much as we can. Thus far, the creators have been holding all the burden for supporting Patreon. We don't think that's fair to them, so we're going to try this new thing. And we're going to be slowly rolling it out over the next 6 months. So in 6 months, I think it would have been a lot more effective because you would have gotten the immediate feedback right then of, hey, blah, blah, blah. But since it's 6 months away, I sincerely doubt anyone would have been canceling their Patreon pledges, especially if you phrase it as, we really want your feedback. Let us know. This is what we intend to do. Let us know. We've been working a lot. We think this is going to be best for creators and Patreon. That would have been a significantly better way to do this. That ship has sailed. You have the bad press already. I think a second way that could be incredibly effective in this is an ability to opt into it. Again, I had people ask me when I used to really push my Patreon, is there a way that I can cover the fees so that you can get more of the money I want to give you? Like, I'm fine with that. If you just had a button that said, I'll pay the fees, I'll pay extra for my pledge, I'll cover all processing fees or something like that, and let people opt into it, that would be a significant improvement, because then the people that are complaining like, well, I can't afford this or anything, they can go back to the way it was. The creators themselves are not going to notice this huge drop in revenue because of all these people dropping. And they will notice an increase because they are going to have people that are loyal to them that are like, yeah, sure, I have no problem covering this. Even $1 patrons, given the option instead of making it mandatory, you would have a lot of people that have just canceled their accounts, would have been completely fine with, oh no, actually that sounds like a good idea. I would much rather the creators get more of my money, and the creators get paid better. I understand. Yeah, again, Patreon needs money to work. That's how they work. And the other way that I see of this working is I don't understand the back end of Patreon, like the programming and everything. So I don't know how feasible this is. If you could simply exclude the $1 patrons from this, even just the flat fee, like if you kept the 2.9% on there, but if you got rid of the flat fee for just the $1 patrons, I really think that would solve most of the issues for this. Because again, generally your Patreon tiers will go $1, $5 to $10, $20 to $30, and then you get 50, 100, and some of them will go even higher than that. By the time you get to $5, 35 cents doesn't mean anything, or an extra, 40, 50 cents. It really does not make that big a difference. But the $1 is where it hurts the most. So if there was a way that you guys could just opt out the $1 patrons, again, that's by far the largest base for most Patreons, is the $1 patron pledge or $2 patron pledge, because people don't even think about it. They're like, $1 is easy. And it is a significant increase by just adding on that 35 cents and that 2%. Again, I don't think this is a bad idea. I think it sucks that the creators have had to foot the burden for this as long as they have. And that there hasn't been a better system in place from this company that I believe is cutting edge, that really is trying to do their best to help creators out and have created careers for people. Again, the Jimquisition has been entirely Patreon funded for years. There are tons and tons of creators that make their living off of their Patreon, or it is a large source of supplemental income that lets them be creators and makes it so they don't have to have 8 to 5 jobs and stuff like that. So they've done amazing, wonderful things. They have created a generation of creators that couldn't have existed in any other way, shape, or form. And I think they're getting a lot of flack that they don't deserve. They're simply trying to do what it is that their business is designed to do, which is help get creators the money they need to be able to create their art and live off of it. That's the entire purpose of their company, and this is a step in that direction. It was a poorly taken step, and I don't think it was nearly as well thought out as they seem to think it was, and now they are simply silent about it, which is another thing that's pissing people off and is never a good idea. The first response, PR 101, the first response to something this massive should always be, hey, we heard what you're saying. We get what you're saying. We're working on it. It's a very simple statement that means nothing. But it lets people know that they're being heard. It lets people know that the company is actively doing something. It's not just sitting on their hands and going, it fucking sucks to be you, doesn't it? Because this is what we're doing because it's our company. So Patreon, say something. Just go, hey, we heard you. We're working on it. Trust us. You've trusted us for like 4.5 or 5 years. We made, we made a mistake. We're going to figure out how to make this work. All right, calm down. And if you would, again, if you would like a marketing consultant or a management consultant, again, that's what I am currently studying, and I'm only, I'm a couple months away from having my degree. So, and I have years of experience before getting the degree. Is just I'm just getting it because I was tired of people saying, "Well, we need someone with management experience." I'm like, yeah, I have 5 years of management experience. Well, we need someone with management experience. I ran sales for a multi-million-dollar store, like all sales. I ran numbers. I did sales training. I tracked metrics. I tracked profit and loss. Like I did everything. We're looking for someone with management experience. Fine, whatever. It's the only reason I'm getting this degree is so I can have a degree that goes, no, look, I have management experience. I have a nifty piece of paper with fancy writing on it that says I do. Half the courses I've basically tested out of because I learned all the useful parts of the course actually managing, and the useless parts of the course were like vocabulary words for, the type of management that I prefer to use, or other stuff like that, or, the big 5 personality types, which is pointless. Or rather, it's not pointless, but the way it's used currently in business is a completely worthless. It actually has a lot of uses. They're just businesses don't use it the proper way. Which I could go into an entire video about that. Anyway, so yes, that is a very long-winded explanation of this whole Patreon fiasco and why it's not like all this negative press that they're getting, that they're these evil, money-grubbing, horrible. It's not true. They're wonderful people that actually care about helping to support creators so that they can make art and make a living off of it. That has been their goal the entire time, and they took a step that they felt would make it easier for creators to make their art. It would make it so that they could make more money off of their art. It made it, and it was the wrong step. To be blunt, it was the wrong step. It was poorly implemented. I don't think all the ramifications were considered. Net profit loss, this is going to end as a loss to creators, as it is right now. However, Patreon has the ability to change. They have the ability to fix things, and I really do think that they're going to do that. I would prefer to not see them just backtrack completely and go, no, we're going to go back and just put the entire burden on creators again, because that's the way you guys like it. Because I don't think the majority of the people want that. I think a lot of people don't understand how the system works, and when they found out that, oh my God, Patreon actually not all of my money goes there. Well, no, I mean, they started showing that months ago, where they would actually show the actual amount that the patron was getting, as opposed to what was pledged to the patron. It used to be you could list how much you had in pledges. And you never actually got that amount because of fees and processing and everything like that. So they changed months ago to show what the actual amount the creators were getting. And this is the next logical step in that direction of people went, wow, it looks like you've gone down. It's like, no, actually, that's how much money I've been really making. And Patreon's never been secretive about this. It's not like like if you look in their FAQ, they talk about, well, this is how we work. We take a percentage of this, and that's how we run the company. That's how we can pay our staff, and that's how we can, pay the hosting costs and everything like that. None of this has ever been secret. The only people that are blindsided by this are people that never took the time to figure out what it was. They just went, oh, magic money. I push the button, and then they get the money. And they never thought that a business couldn't live like that. So, yes, Patreon, if you're still watching this, fix your shit. You can. Like, this can totally 100% do a 180 into your favor. You really, really can. But you got to do it now, because the creators that depend on you to fund their livelihood need you to get this fixed. And again, $1 patrons are the lifeblood of most Patreons. So you need to factor that in. You know, if you can, like I said, if you can either opt in and out, I think would be a good strategy. Though I think the best strategy would be just exclude $1 patrons. Again, I don't know if that's feasible I don't understand the back end stuff, so I don't know if that's even possible. But if it is possible, I think that would be an absolute best case scenario, because then the people that are impacted by this the most are going to be the ones that aren't going to be affected by it. And that would be, does that mean that Patreon itself is not going to make as much money off of this? Yes. And again, I sincerely think the whole point of this was not so Patreon could just line their pockets. I really do think they want to help creators, and they have a company that is growing exponentially and need more money. So they thought that this was the best way to do both of those. It wasn't. So yeah, those are my thoughts on this. I feel absolutely miserable. I read up on withdrawal and I prepared myself and everything. Like, there's nothing you can do to prepare for withdrawal. It is absolutely the most horrible, disgusting thing I've ever gone through in my life. So I'm not making. I have one more video that I would like to make. I don't think I'm going to have the strength to make it tonight. Because dear God, is this not fun? But yes. That's the Patreon fiasco. It's not what everyone is claiming it is. It is not money grubbing. It's not anything like that. It was them trying to do exactly what they've been trying to do for years. They just did it in a bad way. And knowing them through a third party, I guarantee you they're going to get this fixed. They are. They are not YouTube, where they're this giant company that doesn't actually care about their creators, because their creators... YouTube makes money doesn't make money off its creators. It doesn't. It makes money off of ads. I mentioned this in a video before. The reason YouTube doesn't care about its creators because their creators are not their customers. They're not. Ad companies are their customers. And the people that watch videos are their target market. Not the creators. The creators don't actually factor into either the target market or their customers themselves. That's not it. YouTube sells ads to companies, and then the companies pay for ads so they can get to a very specific targeted market. That's what it is. The creators themselves are simply the supply, and the supply is so high right now that they really don't have to care where they get it from. They don't. They never had. In the same way that, the same way that a wheat farmer is not going to hire a therapist to make sure that their wheat feels good, YouTube doesn't care about its creators. Patreon does. Patreon cares about the creators because that is where they make their money from. That is the entire purpose of their business. YouTube's business model was never to help creators. It was to make money. That is the entirety of their business model. It always has been. Patreon has been to help creators create. And I think that's what they're trying to do now. They just did it poorly. So that's all. I'll see you guys later or tomorrow or sometime. I am going to go pass out into a coma. Oh my Lord, do I feel horrible. Bye-bye.